Okay, welcome, welcome. I really apologize for the issues we just had earlier on the other link. Please, can you hear me now? If you can hear me, can just indicate, please. Okay, and you can see my screen, right? Can you see my screen? Okay. All right, now I guess we are good to go. So we'll continue while others join us. So what I was saying is right. Today we'll be discussing on three things. Which number one is Node.js module and the require function. Then we'll be discussing on an asynchronous programming pattern, the callback promises, and async await. You see, Node.js particularly, like in our previous class when we talk about blocking and non-blocking, Node.js is a non-blocking programming language that actually uses this asynchronous programming pattern. So, in a nutshell, let me just give you an example, a simple example of what the whole um, asynchronous programming pattern actually infers. So, this is it. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you order for three things. You order for ice cream. Okay, you're in a let's say in a cafe or whatever. You order for ice cream. You order for cheeseburger, and you order for let's say chicken pies or whatever. You see, asynchronous programming can actually what it does is it can make all this order and bring them at once to your table. But in a synchronized programming system, it has to go get you your ice cream, come back, go get your cheeseburger, then get the other item for you in a sequential pattern. So this doesn't actually it is a system they call a blocking system. You understand? It has to finish one task before proceeding to the other task. But in asynchronous programming system, it can actually do all these tasks and return results for you at once. uh, there's no they do it together. I don't know if you understand. That is just a basic illustration of what a synchronous programming system is. And most importantly, today again we'll be talking about back end and database interaction with Node.js, which I think is one of it's also one of a very important aspect in backend development, the database, because backend development has to do a lot more with interaction of data. You are receiving data from the client side. You are processing this data, storing this data on the database, fetching the data again, and sending it back to the client side. That's just basically what happens on the server side, interactions with data together with the client side. So this morning, let's get started with Node.js modules and the required function. Okay, let me take this heading for you. Node.js module creation. Are we okay? Okay, my guy, thank you for staying. You're going to learn a lot. So we have this any JavaScript file in Node.js is considered a module. You can create your own module by writing code in separate files and exporting those functions, objects, or value that you want to make available in other parts of your application. So basically, what this is saying is in JavaScript, especially in Node.js, um, when you create a file, that file particularly is known as a module, right? You create an app.js file. That file is known as a module. So what this module does is okay. Hope you are following. So what this module does is you can actually write. whatever code you want to write on this module that you want to execute. Let's say you want to write a function, you want to write an object, you are writing a variable, whatever you want to write, this module is enough to contain whatever you want to write. So in a situation where you are writing a function where you want to use in subsequent areas in your code base, especially in programming, especially in the back end, what we do is you write a function and you write this function in a separate file which should be made used in other files. So what this is just a typical example of what this is saying is you can actually write a function and make use of that. You can actually write a function in a file, then make use of that function in a separate file. You understand? Or use those functions subsequently in different files. So I'll be taking you to how we can write a function, how we can actually export a function on in JavaScript, Node.js. So let's do this. We have here module export. To make functionality available from a module, you use the module export or export object. Anything assigned to the module or export will be available from import in other modules using the require function. So this is basically what we do here. We have a file. I have already created a file function is going on. Hello, okay, please let me reply somebody asking of the time. Okay, we are okay. So the backend class is ongoing. So if you can hear me, please indicate. If you can see, also indicate. If there's anything you're not getting clear, if you're not seeing me clearly, okay. Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about importing and we are talking about exporting and importing of modules in the Node.js. So this is I have created a file. A simple file, my function.js, and this file we are going to be exporting. We are going to be exporting a function. We are going to be exporting a function which is console logging hello from my function. So this is just basically what we do here. We name our function const my function. I have explained to you how we actually write functions in Node.js. This pattern is a pattern we call arrow styling of functioning, where you use arrow formation styling of functioning. Or yeah, this is just a basic way of writing arrow function. So when you want to export this particular function here, name my function, what you do is you call this keyword module dot export, then you pass in this my function. So if we have done this, the next thing we want to do is to import this function. So back to our notes. Please, I don't know if do you have access to this note. If you have access to this note, please can you indicate? Do you have access to this note? you have access to this note? If you have access to this note, this blog post here, if you don't have access to it, I can share it so we follow up. Interesting. Do we have access to this note? Let me share. I don't know if you can follow the link from here. This is the link. Can we copy the link here? Okay, yeah, you can join. You can have access to this note I am actually using here, this post, so you can follow up with what we are doing. So now we have actually exported this function. So the next thing we want to do is to import this function. We are going to create another file. We're going to create another file, but before then, this is the note we have here. So to import functionality from a module into another module, you use the require function. This function takes the path to module file as its argument and returns the exported functionality. For example, in another file, let us create let us create this and see how it works. Hope we are here. Hope we are following. Okay. So we have exported this function, exporting a function. Then the next thing we want to do is to import the function. Let's create a new file where we want to import this function. Let's say we want to import this function in um, okay, let us use our app.js. We have our app.js already, right? We have our app.js and we want to import that function which we created. First thing we'll do is we have to use a required keyword. What the keyword actually does is it actually imports that function which we just created. So this is how simple it is. We come here, then we pass in this. I hope we are all following. I hope we're all following. The name of the function is called and the function is on the same. The name of the function is called my function. My function. Yes. Let's do this. Okay, coming. Let's say I do this. Okay, if you do this, you come here and get my function. Now we are importing this function. Hope we are following. Okay. In the process of importing this function, we want to call the function which we are importing. We want to call that function here. So what we do next is we come to this place. Let's say we want to call it in this particular route that we have here, this endpoint. We do you call it call function. You say let's use let's call function equal to, then you pass the function which you want to call. This is the function. Then in here const we call in this response.send we call the function name. I think since this is a function, we're supposed to pass this. Yes. So by doing this, if we I hope we're all following. I hope we're all following. If you're not following, please can you indicate if you're not getting, if you're lost somewhere. I would take us back so we because I want us to grasp everything. If you're not understanding me clearly, you can take us back, please. Okay, I assume we are clear. So by the time you do this, right? Let's call this particular endpoint. Let me run this node app node app. Okay, our application is running. So if you come to our browser and check localhost 3000, localhost 3000. If we do this, um, we are supposed to, okay, that's supposed to be a console log. That's supposed to be a console log. Okay, let's change this function to something different, like return. Let's put this function. Let's do this. Let's do a return statement. Let's say it returns Control C. I think this is proper JavaScript to do. You can see by doing that, we actually console logging. It's actually console logging, but I want us to return an information in the browser. So if we do this, I think we have to start the if we refresh, we can see hello from my function. So why this happens is because we exported this particular function. Mind you, this function has a return statement which says hello from my function. Then we came into our entry application, that's our entry point file, app.js. We imported the function. You can see how importing of function is being done. This is just a simple method. You require the function, then you pass in you give the function which you require a variable, the variable you're going to call. So in this situation, we are calling this my function, right? Which is a function. Then we are assigning it to this call function. Then if you look here, this is like a callback. Yeah, it's an async operation. You send your response. This actually means response.send call function. This is just a way we actually return return. This is just a way we actually return data to the client side. We use either this response.send. I think you can use JSON. JSON should be able to return something too. If you perform response.json, let's do a console. Then we do a node app. I think JSON should also be enough to call. Okay, this is how JSON is being printed. This is how it's actually printed in a JSON format on the browser. But let's make use of the send. So basically, this is just how the importing statement, the exporting a module actually works in JavaScript. There is no much big deal. You can export a function. You can export a function directly. You can export a function as a module. You understand? These are just ways we actually use the export statement in JavaScript and also in Node.js programming. So next we'll be talking about core modules. Core modules actually, let's go through it together. I hope we are all following. Okay, core modules. What core modules actually entails is Node.js comes with a set of built-in module known as core modules. These modules provide various utilities and functions and can be imported using require without without specifying a path. For example, the require fs. So what this is actually saying, right? This core module in Node.js, um, we have a built-in statement, and this built-in statement is actually um, it's a Node.js package itself, right? That runs files manipulation, and it does a lot of things. These are core Node.js. It's not like you created this file. This is just a Node.js file. We'll not be going much into this for now, but this is just a way where, in a way, you want to manipulate your own Node.js file using the Node.js package directory. This is what you use. You use the fs require. You can actually create a new file. You can save. You can create a new file, save a new file. I think we can do something on that. Write a new file. Let's check for an example online how we can make use of this. um, Create a new file with this module. Okay, file system. Let's use this one. You see, you can read a file, create files, update files, delete files, and rename files. So let's say let's use an example from this fs. um, okay, w3 school. I wouldn't want to use this. Let me use okay, let's use w3 school and write a file. I just want to give you an example of how this works. Okay, let's create a file file system. Hope we are following. Okay, the file method appends specified content to a file. If the file does not exist, the file will be created. So this is how it actually works. Let's say we want to create a new file. Let's create a new file. Let's just copy this. Okay, let's use this to create a new file using the open file method. Okay, let's use this and see how we can create a new file. Let's call this new file. Let's call this new file create file. Okay, let's call it create file.js. Create file.js. Then we pass in this module. This module, you don't need to import it anywhere. We are calling this file. Yes, let's call this file. um, let's call this file test file. Let's call this file test.txt, and the content we are going to have here is let's use somebody as an example. Let's use my guy is always in attendance. Okay, let's say my guy is always in attendance. So what this does is this is just how we create a file. You create the file by there are different methods, but we are just trying this from the one we got from W3 school. The file name is going to be this first argument here. is going to be the file name text.txt. This is going to be the content in this file, and this is going to be the callback. So if there's an error, it's going to throw an error, else it's going to console log saved. Then that means our file has been created. So let us see that. Let us see how this works. So we do our node dot create node dot create node dot create file. If we hit enter, it's saved, and here we have our file. It happens like magic. So this is just how the mega is always in attendance. This is just basically how we use the FX module in Node.js. That's this particular module. I hope we're all following. I hope we're all following. Please, if you're still with me, please indicate. I don't mind if it's just one person. If you're with me, indicate. Please let me know. Let me know who is in attendance. Okay. Okay. Hope you're following. I hope you're following. So next we have created this file. Next we want to move further to third-party modules. Third-party modules, in addition to the core modules, Node.js has a vast ecosystem of third-party modules available through NPM, Node Package Manager. That's what NPM means. You can install third-party modules using NPM and then import them into your application using require. So just like the first instance where we actually created our own module by ourselves, but in this situation, when we talk about third-party module, we're talking about NPM packages. So, we'll keep from this one for now. When we talk about third-party packages, we're talking about packages that we install from NPM module. And what this is actually saying is, just like when we installed Express in our, I think in our second class, in our first class when we installed Express, that's a third party module. Is a module that you are not the one that created it. You are actually installing it from the Node Package Manager. So you install this package, then you use the require function to import the package. So what's how we actually do this is, what module can we make use of? Okay. Yes, let's just go back to our app.js. This is an Express module. This is an Express module. And if you can remember, the way we actually installed Express module, the first day we did it, we can actually run it again and it will work. The way we actually did it was to use our npm. We did npm install Express. That is all. I hope we can see my screen. Let me. Okay. The way we can actually install Express is we use the command npm I Express and we click on enter. So this continues to install. Okay, okay. So I'm trying to install Express again. Pardon my device. My device is kind of slow. So we just installed Express, right? Let's assume we didn't have Express before and we just installed it. What we just did now is we have installed a third-party module. This is the module that was not created by me nor created by you, but it's a module that is in the npm package. This is where we have npm express, npm express. So we come here. There are different. There are thousands of modules that are available. You cannot imagine. npm alone has, I think, how many downloads? We have weekly downloads of over 30,000. So you can imagine how many developers are coming in and they're making use of Express. You can see the command how to install Express, npm install Express. But for short, you can just use the keyword npm I Express. So this is a party module, not like we created this module ourselves. So what you do, how we install this module is you use your npm install command, then the name of the module. Then when importing this module is just like the same way where you import your own module you created. If you can remember, we created this my function module together. This is a module. You can see module.export my function. We created this module together. Then we came here, that's into the app application, and we called the module here. I hope we are following. We called the module. Same thing happens here when we created Express. You create your Express, and you call the express, you import it. This is just how you import the express. Require express, you call the express, then you use the function whichever way you want to make use of it. It's as simple as that. So I think that is that for um, Java Node.js module. Node.js module and require function. This is just the basic things that happen when using your module. You export your module, you create the module, you export it, and you import the module. If it's a third-party module, you install it. If it's an FX module, you just make use of the FX module. And there are different methods that can be attached when you're making use of this FX module. You can imagine the type of methods. Let's say methods in FX modules. There are tons and tons. Let's use the Node.js package. You can see there are lots of methods that you can use. You can't even imagine. You understand? There are plenty. All these things are the ways you can actually use the FX module. You can see how it's been called FX. All these are different methods you can actually use in calling FX module. So I just encourage you guys as developers, you should not get scared or get overwhelmed by things when you see them. All these things are simple. That they are simple things with time. With time, you get better. You get familiar with reading documentation. You get familiar with implementing those things you read on documentation. So just like I said in the first class we had, you should just stick to it. Just stick to it. You're confused, stick to it. The longer time you spend in a barbering shop, sooner or later you're going to have a haircut. So that is just how it is. So I know some of these things are um, they are too big, and you get confused time to time, but it's normal. It's normal to get confused. Even me teaching, um, there are situations where I don't really know most of these things offhand. I just get reflexes and remember them, then check, search Google. For Google is my friend and is a friend too. So these things are not they are not rocket science like I used to say. It is something that we all can do. It is software engineering, and there are a lot of tools, and there are a lot of resources that we can actually use and learn from. So in the next topic, in the next phase of our today's class, we'll be talking about asynchronous programming pattern. So this is one of those important parts of Node.js. I'll take us back to the explanation I made earlier, where I said Node.js is a non-blocking technology. You see, like some other programming language or how JavaScript is a blocking system where it performs a task one after the other. That is, it has to complete one task before moving to the other task. But with the existence of Node.js, or how the technology is actually built, it is a non-blocking system. So it's a system that uses asynchronous style of programming, like the callbacks, the promises, async await, all these things are asynchronous system of programming. So basically, what this does on a human level is it can perform different tasks at once sequentially. That is, you go to a restaurant, like I said, you order for three things: item one, item two, and item three. A synchronous pattern of system will actually get item one. Then after getting item one, it goes back, get item two. After getting item two, it goes back to get item three. But in an asynchronous pattern, what it does is, as it's getting item one, if item one is not fully yet ready, it starts processing item two. Once item two is ready, it brings you item two, brings you item. You understand? It makes programming, or it makes the interaction of data very easy. So that is one of the core importance in Node.js, the asynchronous programming pattern. So let me go this with you. Asynchronous programming in JavaScript revolves around managing tasks that don't necessarily happen in sequence. You see, traditionally this was done using callbacks, but when the introduction of promises and async await, developers now have more elegant and readable ways to handle asynchronous code. So let's go ahead to callbacks. Okay, I hope we are still in the call. Hope we are following. Okay, please, if you are following, indicate, say hi. Let me hear you say hi, or type hi if you're following. I need to know who is in the call and who is not. See, this class is actually important because you're grasping the those core functionalities that actually happen on the back end. You know. So please, if you're in the class, can you say hi? Can you type hi or chat hi? Let me see. Okay, okay, okay. I appreciate you. I appreciate your efforts, my guy. I appreciate your efforts. Thank you for Thank you so much. Okay, so let's proceed. Let's proceed. So let's proceed. We're talking about callbacks. Callbacks as a function passed as an argument to other functions. They are executed when the task completes. Callbacks can lead to callback hell when dealing with nested asynchronous operation. So, what this is actually saying is callback, right? Callback are functions that you pass as an argument in other functions. So, let's say, for example, you wrote a function that actually check um, if it is 8 o'clock. So you check a function. In this function, you check this function. What this function does is it checks if the time is 8 o'clock. So if the time is 8 o'clock, you want to perform something. If it's 8 o'clock, you want to say, okay, write my name on so so table, write my name on so so place. I'm just giving an example. That is just what callbacks actually does. So this is an example of callback. It written in callback. So I will be taking you to this. I've already done written this down. So this is a function, right? This is a function. Can you see my? I hope you're seeing my screen. In this function, what it does is this function. If you can see my screen, what this function does is we have a function called fetch data, and we are passing an argument callback, right? So this function, right? This function does we are passing also a set timeout function that actually reads a 1 millimeter per second, which is just 1 second. 1,000 millimeter per second is 1 second. So in 1 second, this should. So let's make this 2,000, or let's make it 5,000, which is 5 seconds. So this set timeout now is actually passing a data, and is calling back that data. Is calling back that data. So this is what we actually do. This is actually what we do now. We call that fetch data, and we call that fetch data. This is a function, right? We call that fetch data, right, and pass in the data, this particular data, right? This particular data that we have assigned here, we call it here and console log it. So if you do this, what happens is, if you do this, is you see node callback, node callback. If you do this, you see it waits after 5 seconds, then boom, it calls back the hello world. So what this is actually saying is you have written a function here, but this function will not execute until 5 seconds. I don't know if you guys are following. This is just actually what callbacks don't. That's why we say it's an asynchronous Java. It's an asynchronous operation. It executes after um, a function is being met. You understand? So that's a very good example of how asynchronous operation works. Then next, we would want to let's continue with promises. So promises provide a cleaner alternative to callbacks by representing eventually completion or failure of asynchronous operation. They can be chained together, making it easier to manage multiple asynchronous tasks. So in promises is also like it's also like promises is also like like how do I put it, like callbacks too. They are also callbacks too, but a cleaner callbacks. So in promises, you this is an example of how promises work. An example of how you write promises. Let's come back to this. You see, in JavaScript promises, this is an example of how you write your promise. We have a function here. I hope you're all following. In this function, we are calling this function fetch data. So now promise, right? Promise has two things that goes on. It's either it is resolving or it is rejecting in promises. So if you actually do this, if you actually do this, go do this. Show everyone. I don't know if this is correct, but let me. So I just want to promise reject. Show me present show us. Show me. So log show. Oh no. Set time out. Function. So present happen. Okay. Set time out. Function. Resolve. Instead by using original promise reject function. Sorry. Time out. Okay. Function is reject. However, you use okay. Let's use this method. So what we just do here is, so once it doesn't work, it returns this error. So if so we have a function here, and this function returns a new promise. It returns a promise. This is how we actually write promises in JavaScript. You give it a keyword, new promise, and it takes two arguments, resolve or reject. So if the result you are passing is actually true, that the result you are getting is correct, is going to be resolved. But if it's failing, it's going to be rejected. So now we are using a set timeout function. So we actually pass success as true, and we say if success, right? If success, sorry, let me clean up this so you can see. So if success is true, you give this variable hello world, then resolve data, else you reject, and you pass the rejection will return this value. So now when we are fetching the data, when we fetch the data in promises, why promises it's actually more important, it's more better to use this. You can also have other functions in here that you would want to call if only this function is being met. So if this function is being met, that is when you can actually execute those functions. You can actually call those functions inside this particular den. You can actually call those functions inside this particular den. Let's say, okay, let's run this particular one. Then I will show you how node let's put this to 3 seconds. Node dot promises. So you can see this is how like I said, it is also like your callbacks, but it the way it's being written is actually different. This one uses the argument resolve or reject. If it is resolved, it calls this. If it's resolved, you call it positive. Then if it's reject, it is negative. That is just what it entails. And you can actually call other functions when they are successful. You use this your then you use your then or catch method. If if it fails, this catch method is going to catch the error. That is just what it entails. Now, in this situation, our callback is actually passing, so you don't have to. There's no reject reject response. So um, that is basically that for promises. So like I said, it's not don't get too don't get too overwhelmed or confused about things. They're just there are things you will learn as you begin to use them. As you begin to use most of this thing in your code, you get to understand. Okay, this is where this one comes in. This is where I have to use this callback. This is a situation where I have to use promises. So it's not something you have to kill yourself about that you don't understand on the first sitting. You have to get worried about things. No, no, no. Just keep following. Note me in areas where you are not you are not clear, and I would gladly come back to explain things clearly. So the next we have to discuss on is async await, which I think is async await now is one of the most favorites being used by developers around JavaScript. I mostly frequently use async await to as callbacks. In most of my code I am most familiar, you would see where I mostly use async await. And the usage, let me show you the usage. I have created a file. All these things are in that note which we have. So async await has a keyword, unlike other callbacks where you just write your function, your promises, you just write your function. But in async operation, you write the async keyword as in AXY and C. It is just how you start writing your async operation. So it is not like every other one. You have to include this async before you write your function to indicate an async operation. So in this async operation, we are still using a promise callback, but this async operation, in most cases, this promise callback is not. Don't get it twisted. It's just an example we are using to call out the set timeout. There are so many JavaScript cases where you won't be using promises to actually resolve data. You won't be using promises to resolve data. You will just fetch those data directly as a backend developer. I'm just teaching you on the JavaScript side of things. So in function, this is how we write async function. You write the keyword async first, then you call the function which you want to do, which you want to execute. So in this situation, we are actually calling a function fetch data, and we are returning a promise which takes resolve and which take resolve only. And in that resolve, we are now calling that function. We have our promise resolve set timeout, which actually calls out hello world in 1 minute. This is 1000 milliseconds. Let's convert it to in 3 seconds. 3000 milliseconds is actually 3 seconds. So now we now have a function. We now have a function main. Remember, this promise as is actually resolved, so you can use this function subsequently in other places. In the actual main promise file, we used the then method. This then method will actually construct a resolved promise data. I don't know if you understand. The promise is a keyword in JavaScript and asynchronous styling, but this is a promise. Is actually returning the if the data is being resolved, you can actually use the then fetch method. But in this situation, we are actually using an asynchronous pattern, which we have a resolved promise already. As we have a resolved promise already, but we are using an asynchronous styling to call it. So this is what we do. We create another function called main, an async function called main. Now, this async function, what it does is it calls that fetch data. Already, this fetch data has resolved data allocated to it, which the resolved data is known as hello world. I just want you to grasp what is going on. So, this function fetches that data, assign it to a name data, then console logs that data. Then, in the final case, we are now calling our function, this main function here. So what it's going to do is, let's just say hello Africa instead of hello world. We have been using hello world, hello Africa, hello African tech. Let's use hello African tech. We save our file. So by calling this particular file right now, by calling this particular file, by calling this particular file, we can do we can do by calling this particular file, what we do now is um, we say node.async. Remember, we gave it 3 seconds. The promise is supposed to be resolved in three. Once it's resolved, it's supposed to be called in 3 seconds. So hello African tech. So what this is just saying is async, asynchronous programming pattern. Do this when this is done. Do this as this is being done. These are just ways we actually manipulate data and make things very fast in programming. So I think we are we are done with this section of asynchronous programming. I know we have questions, but please let's keep our questions. For now, we would get back to questions time. Just keep adding them up. So now we want to proceed with a very good topic, which is the database and um, backend and database interaction with Node.js. So why I say this is a very important topic is because in every cases of um, back-end development has to do, that's in big scale application, it has to do with the interactions of data. And what these data are is these data are only stored or kept in the database. So as a backend developer, as a Node.js developer, you should be fully aware that you are going to be doing a lot with manipulation of data, not a lot with, you don't have much business with what happens on the client side, like how the interaction of the software application actually happens on the front end side. You are most particularly with the data that are being given to you from the front end, how you process those data, how you interact with those data in relation to how you're putting them on the database. So, like that's why we said earlier that back end has to do a lot more with logic, because you are just being given data of different types, integer, some numbers, some strings. So it is your responsibility as a backend developer to be able to know how to manipulate this data, how to convert this data, how to store this data in the database. So that's why we are going to be, I think, database is one important topic when it comes to backend development. So I'll be going through this together with you. We said backend development involves creating server-side application and API that handles requests from the client, process data, and interact with data and interact with the database to store and retrieve information. Node.js, with event-driven and non-blocking input-output model, is a popular choice for building back-end systems due to its efficiency and scalability. So what this is actually saying is just what I explained earlier. So we'll be going further with explaining database options. Hope we are following. Okay. Okay, so we'll be going further with database options, which is SQL databases. SQL databases. These are when we say database options, are the like the different types of database that we have. So I'll be taking you, or we'll be talking about SQL database, which says relational databases like MySQL, Progress SQL, and SQLite. All these are different types of SQL database, are commonly used for structured data storage. They are used they are used for querying and managing data. So don't get confused about things. On a very simple explanation, the SQL database is just um, a type of database that is being structured in rows and columns. You understand? These are database that are being structured in rows and column. You have to store the data. Either you're storing those data as a table in a table format. That is just what it entails. It uses a table structure of storing data. So that is an SQL, and the different types. We have MySQL, we have Progress SQL, and we have SQLite. All these are different types of, they are actually they have the same pattern of storing data, but they have different commands, almost similar, because MySQL and Progress SQL are almost similar when it comes to manipulating data. They have similar ways of they have similar ways which you can use to store data. So the next one we have NoSQL. Remember, this is SQL. Then we have a NoSQL database. It says non-relational database such as MongoDB, CouchDB, and Redis offer flexibility and scalability for handling unstructured or semi-structured data. So these are two different stylings. The first one is a structured data, then the second one is an unstructured data. So what this actually entails is this doesn't use a table format of storing data, right? This is a different, it uses a different way of storing data. So just have it at the back of your mind that the first one uses a table structure, while the second one doesn't use a table structure of storing data. Then the next one we have is the graph databases. I would love to show you an example. Let's go through Google and check for sample data of a NoSQL database. Hmm. Sample data. Okay. Okay. Let's hope we are still on the call. I just want to give us a little insight of what is an example of how a NoSQL. Okay, let's check MongoDB. MongoDB themselves. So types of SQL. Okay, this is actually how this is an example of how data are being stored. You can see um, okay, this is a typical example. They say let's consider an example of storing information about a user and their hobbies. We need to store a user's first name, last name, cell phone number. In a relational database, we would create two tables, like one for user and one for the user's hobby, right? We have two tables, right? In that this is an SQL style of storing data. We have the user first and we have the user's hobby. So the user has his ID one. So this is the user's details, the user's first name, last name, cell phone, and um, city. Then these are his hobbies. The user ID, this particular user is who is this person here, has hobbies as scrapbooking, eating waffles, and walking. This is an SQL pattern. Hope you can see my screen because this is important. This is really important. I'm glad I got this example. This is an SQL, a relational database like MySQL, right? ProgSQL are commonly used for structured data. This is a typical example of how you store data in an SQL pattern. In order to retrieve all of this information, that is, in order to get the information about the user and their hobbies information from the user's table, the table will need to join together. So all these ones are later practice. So they say the data model we design for a NoSQL database will depend on the type of NoSQL database we choose. Let's consider how to store same information about a user and their hobbies in a document database like MongoDB. So you see, in MongoDB, which is a NoSQL styling, this is how data is being stored. Remember, we have the user's ID as one, we have his first name, last name, cell, every data which was also stored in the first one. Then we have their hobbies as an array. I don't know if you guys are following. So this is just an example of what an, of how an SQL database and also a NoSQL database, a NoSQL database, I mean, sorry for using SQL. A no SQL database actually stores data. This one stores data in an object or JSON format, while this stores data in a table format. So that's just that for that. Then next on the list, we'll have next on the list we have graph database. Graph database for now, you just get aware that just know that we have a database style into which is the graph database. We will not be going deep into this for now. I don't think we at our level we are supposed to be concerned about graph database. The knowledge of SQL database and NoSQL database, I think, is should be enough for now. So, when interacting with database in Node.js, we have different ways which we actually interact with Node database. First of all, let's break this down for us. We have we have we have we have our application which we use to write the interaction, which we use to write the logic that actually stores the database. And we also have our database on its own as a separate service, which actually does this whole. which actually does which actually does which actually does the saving, which actually saves the data for us. So in order for us to actually connect our application and the database, we we have to do some connection, we have to do some integration. This is where this particular heading comes into interacting with databases in Node.js. So first on our list, we have using database drivers. Node.js provides various database drivers that enable interaction with different database systems. For example, MySQL DG for Progress SQL. Then we have MongoDB for MongoDB SQL. So all these things are like packaged. So this MySQL, or let's use this MySQL. If you search for MySQL on this our Express package, let's say we want to interact with a database. If you search for MySQL, right, you can see we have this as a package which you can install just like the way we installed our Express application. We can see the usage here, how we can use it, connect to the database, create a connection. These are these are just basic things you get to understand with time. So what I'm just saying is we have database drivers, and these database drivers are used to connect our application with the database which we want to store those data. So down to then we have our ORMs and ODMs. ORMs and ODMs, object relational mapping libraries like SQLize for SQL database and object data modeling libraries for Mongoose. Abstract away database specific details and provide a more JavaScript-centric way of working. Okay, this ORM and ODMs are also database drivers. Just that they are more. I think I would say they are more advanced, and they provide a well more readable, a well more way of storing data in the database. It gives you more freedom to model your database, and yeah, when you get to use ORM and use one of these, you get to see the differences, but they actually do the same thing: store data in the database. So the next one we'll be talking about is query builders. Libraries like Kenes offers SQL builder interface that allow developers to write database query using JavaScript syntax, making it easier to work with SQL database in Node.js. So all these are actually drivers that you can use to interact with your database. Let's say you want to store something in the database. All these lists being mentioned here are ways which you can actually, these are technologies or packages, I would say, or you know or libraries that helps you interact with your database without any hassle. So third on our list, which I think is the final is the final stage of database is database operations in Node.js. So these are the operations, these are the things you are likely to do when you are interacting with your database in Node.js. First on the list is connecting to the database. Establish a connection to the database server using appropriate credentials and connection. So for example, let's say you want to for example, let's say you want to interact with a database from your application. This is my application, right? We have this application here, and we want this application to connect with a database on its own, a different database. So we have to do some little connection. We have to create a connection. That connection is going to be like, okay, yeah, this particular application, this particular project, right? is connected to this particular database. So whatever we want to store on from this application is going to use we are going to use this application logic to store informations in those database. So that is basically one of the operations that we actually do um, one of the operations we do in database. We connect to the database with our application. Then the next one is we execute queries. These queries now, what it actually says is use the database driver ORM ODM to execute CRUD operation. What this CRUD operation entails is create, read, update, and delete. And these are those common operations that we actually do on the server side. We create a name. Let's say you are creating a user, you create that user's name. Let's say you want to read that user's name, you fetch the user's data, you update the user. Let's say the user finally in time in future changes her name, or you have a Facebook account. The first time you create a Facebook account, you gave yourself a name, a username. Then in later future, when you feel like you want to change that name, you could go and update. That is when the update comes in. Or you don't want the account again, you're tired using Facebook, or you don't want that Facebook account, you can perform an operation of delete. So all these things are the operations that actually happens on the database. So next is handling results. Handling results actually entails process the query results or database operation, responses, and handling errors gracefully. Closing connections ensures to close the database connection when it's no longer needed to free up resources and prevent memory leaks. So basically what it's just saying is these two parts is when you fetch those results, what you do with those results which you have fetched, how you manage to handle them, how you eliminate errors and all that. So all these are the operations that you are likely to these are operations that you are likely to attain, or operations you are likely to execute when you are interacting with the database using Node.js. So I have created an example here. This example actually connects to a database, but we have today is Saturday, supposed to be one of our short classes, and we have spent an hour, approaching an hour 30 minutes. So I will just show you on the steps on how to create a database. In our next class, when we will be starting coding properly, I think we are going to build a simple application in our next class. So I am going to show you, we are going to perform a CRUD system in our next class. Our next class is going to be one of the most our next class is going to be the class we have all been waiting for as a backend developer. We are going to see ourselves write those code, execute them, create a user, delete a user, perform those operations on the database. So for now, I let's say you want to connect to a database. So what happens first of all is when connecting to a database, let's create a table. Let's call it connection.js. So if you see here, we have my SQL, which is one of those drivers that was listed here. If you can remember, we say Node.js provides various database drivers that enable interaction with different database systems. For example, MySQL. So, okay, we can even proceed with creating a simple database. Let's say we have this. We have this. Let's create a simple MySQL database and see. Oh, by now we are all How does this thing work? Sandwich. Okay. So we want to create a simple database. Let's first of all install our MySQL. Let's install this. If we want to install this, we come to our terminal, then we paste it, click install. Okay, hope you guys are following. We have installed that MySQL. Come to your package dot, you can see that these are the dependencies that we have. We have Express and we have MySQL, which is we just installed this now, version 2.18.1. So next that we now that we have installed this, let's have a connection. Let's check our connection. So next thing we want to do is following the style, following the usage. You install it. Next thing you want to do is get a connection. X. We first of all import, but I would love to use, instead of using, I'll use const value. If you all remember our module, when we talked about module, first of all, we just installed a module, my SQL module, and we are importing it. Now, next thing we want to do is following our note here, we want to create a connection. So this is how we create a connection. Const X. You come here. This is just the command to create a connection. There's a const. We assign a variable and we take that MySQL. Then the command, we use this method. This is the method name. This is not being provided by us. This is the SQL module method, and we pass in the database details that we want to connect. So let us create a database. Let us create a simple database. Hmm, Let's create a simple database. Creating a simple database. How do we do that? Okay, yeah. Database, let's say connect. So we are creating a new database. Okay. Manage connection. Okay. I think this is how we create a new database. It's been a while since I used this, but let's follow up. Let's call this SpreadTechAfrica. Spread Tech Africa. This is our database name, right? Then connection method, we leave it as it is. We leave this as this is. Username, the username is root. Password. Um, so let's create a user's password. Let's call it user. Okay, we have saved this. Then let's click on Spread Tech Africa is the name. Let me come here. Host is usually local host. Database name is SpreadTech Africa. And password. is user. We actually used user. So then mm, roots, then roots, username. I think we used roots. Okay, username is roots. So let's continue. User fails connection, access denied, user root, user password. Access denied for user root using password. Yes. Mm, let's say I change it to users. Okay, users. Okay, save in vault. Username. Store password connection. Let's use okay, let's use 2024. Why am I getting this error? Then test connection 2024. Okay, let me create a new one, a new connection. Let's call this Spread Tech Africa 2. Please stay with me. Okay, let me just name this the same thing. SpreadTech Africa, the African project, Africa, store invoice, users. Hmm, why am I having this error? Should I come in? Can't I have more than okay? Okay. Okay, let me just connect to an existing database and see. Mm, I'm coming. I don't know why I'm having this. Okay, let me connect to this. As if I still have the password. What could be this password? Okay, do I have this? Okay, please stay with me. I know we have spent time already. I'm just trying to resolve this. Okay, I think without wasting much of our time, we would proceed with the connection of we could proceed with the connection of database in our next class. Proceed with the connection of our database in our next class. I believe we most of us here are tired and um, want to proceed with other things. So for this particular class, we are going to continue. From our next class, we will be doing a lot with interaction with the database. I want to say a very big thank you for the ones who actually stayed till the end of the class. Thank you all. The note has been dropped and there won't be any assignment for us this week. So we should have a wonderful weekend. Thank you and God bless you.